E2F5 TTS, this is a local web UI for F5 TTS with advanced batch processing support. This app supports the following TTS models. So F5 TTS with fairy tale that fakes fluent and faithful speech with flow matching E2 TTS, I embarrassingly easy fully none. Autoregressive 0 shot TTSS. The checkpoints currently support English and Chinese. If you're having issues, try converting your reference audio to WAV or MP3, clipping it to 12s within the bottom right corners, otherwise might have non-optimal auto trimmed result. Note, reference text will be automatically transcribed with whisper if not provided. For best results, keep your reference clips short of 12s. Ensure the audio is fully uploaded before generating. Choose TTS Modo 1E2, TTS Custom Basic TTS Multi-Speech Voice, Chat Credits Basic TTS Multi-Speech Voice, Chat Credits Batch TTS, Reference Audio 0,121,000 text to generate. When you're dealing with a narcissist, your natural instincts, especially if you're a caring or empathetic person, might tell you to appease them. You might try to be overly polite, overly accommodating, or even self-sacrificing just to avoid conflict or to keep the peace. You start walking on eggshells, trying not to upset them, thinking maybe if you're just nice enough, kind enough, or agreeable enough, they'll change. But here's the brutal reality: narcissists thrive on that dynamic. They interpret your appeasement not as kindness, but as surrender. Every time you apologize for something you didn't do, every time you say because when you mean no, every time you let a red flag slide because they had a rough day, you're not gaining their respect. You're training them to expect that they can do as they please, and you'll bend to accommodate it. They begin to see themselves as above accountability, and they lose even more empathy for you. You're no longer a person with your own thoughts and boundaries. You're a tool to feed their ego, to meet their needs, and to validate their self-image. Instead of reacting emotionally or trying to fix things, shift your energy to observing. Watch how they behave when they don't get their way. Pay attention to how they treat others when no one's looking. Notice the pattern in their responses, how they dodge responsibility. Twist your words or play the victim. Observation becomes your defense. It gives you clarity in a situation where confusion has been weaponized against you. You're no longer entangled in their emotional games because you're watching from a distance, emotionally detached, mentally alert. Narcissists are experts at pushing limits. They don't respect personal space, emotional autonomy, or the word no. In fact, to a narcissist, boundaries are seen as a challenge, something to override, erode, or manipulate until they regain control. This is why being passive or inconsistent with boundaries doesn't work. You can't just suggest limits. You have to enforce them firmly, clearly, and without apology. Setting boundaries with a narcissist is not a one-time conversation. It's an ongoing act of self-respect. You might say, I won't tolerate being spoken to like that, or if you raise your voice at me, I'll leave the room. But words mean little if not backed by action. Narcissists often respond with rage, guilt-tripping, silent treatment, or even fake apologies, not to change, but to regain access to your emotional availability. This is their test. If they sense even the slightest hesitation in your boundary, they'll exploit it. That's why your boundaries must be unbreakable, not just suggestions, but firm lines that define your worth and protect your energy. It's not about being aggressive or cold. It's about being consistent and immovable in the face of manipulation. Boundaries aren't about changing the narcissist. They're about changing the rules of how you allow yourself to be treated. You no longer explain, beg, or justify your needs. You simply set the line, and when it's crossed, you respond with action, not debate. There comes a point when reasoning, compromise, and even the firmest boundaries aren't enough. Narcissists often operate in cycles: charm, manipulation, devaluation, and discard, only to restart the cycle when they sense they're losing control. This emotional loop can become so exhausting and destabilizing that the only remaining path to peace is to drastically reduce or entirely cut off contact. It's not a decision made out of anger or revenge, but out of self-preservation. Limiting contact, also known as low contact, is a strategic move when full disconnection isn't possible, such as in co-parenting or professional situations. It means reducing communication to the bare essentials, sticking to facts, and avoiding emotional engagement. You don't seek their validation, approval, or empathy anymore. You stop explaining yourself or trying to get them to understand your perspective because you realize it's not misunderstanding you're facing, it's willful manipulation. In more toxic or deeply damaging situations, no contact becomes necessary. This is a complete disconnection, blocking phone numbers, emails, social media, and removing access points they might use to re-enter your life. It can feel extreme at first, especially if you've been trauma bonded, stuck in a cycle where you feel both hurt by them and inexplicably drawn to them. Narcissists rely on this confusion to keep you in their orbit. They want to leave the door open just enough so they can come back when it suits them. Going no contact shuts that door. This act isn't about punishing them. It's about protecting your mental health, your peace, and your identity. It's about choosing clarity over chaos, healing over harm, and finally putting an end to this cycle that's drained you for far too long. Reducing or eliminating contact gives you the space to think clearly, regain control of your emotions, and reestablish your life without the constant interference of manipulation or emotional sabotage. One of the biggest traps people fall into when dealing with a narcissist is trying to reason with them. You bring logic, calmness, facts, even heartfelt emotion into the conversation, thinking it will lead to understanding. But with a narcissist, arguments are not about resolving problems. They're about asserting dominance. Narcissists don't engage in discussions to reach clarity or truth. They engage to win, to confuse, and to control the emotional atmosphere. Arguing with a narcissist is like stepping into a psychological maze where the walls shift every time you think you're close to an exit. They'll twist your words, deny things they previously said, bring up irrelevant topics, or use your vulnerabilities against you. And the more emotionally invested you are in the outcome, the more fuel they gain. They feed off your frustration. Your anger validates their importance. Your tears make them feel powerful. Even silence can be manipulated to suit their narrative. This is why refusing to argue is such a powerful response. It removes their stage. When you disengage, you strip away the dramatic energy they crave. They want conflict because it keeps them at the center of attention and allows them to rewrite the script in real time. Narcissists hate being ignored, dismissed, or met with indifference because that implies they're not in control, and control is everything to them. By choosing not to argue, you're not surrendering, you're reclaiming your peace. You're choosing to stay anchored while they try to create emotional storms. You're stepping out of their emotional arena where they're strongest and most manipulative. This doesn't mean you avoid confrontation forever or suppress your voice, but it does mean you become strategic. You learn to respond, not react. You choose silence over chaos, clarity over confusion. You speak when it serves your growth, not their game. For many people who have dealt with a narcissist, the word no becomes one of the hardest words to say, not because they don't want to say it, but because they've been conditioned to feel guilty for using it. Narcissists are masters at making others feel selfish, unkind, or disloyal for asserting boundaries. They frame your refusal as a betrayal. Suddenly, you're the one being unreasonable, cold, or uncaring, all because you dared to prioritize your own needs. This emotional manipulation is not accidental. It's carefully constructed to train you to be compliant. Narcissists depend on your people-pleasing tendencies, your empathy, your need to be liked or understood. They twist these strengths into weaknesses and use them to keep you compliant. Over time, You may begin to question your own needs, compromise your values, or sacrifice your well-being, all to avoid confrontation or disapproval. But the ability to say no, and to say it without shame or long-winded explanation, is a critical step in breaking that control. Saying no is a declaration of self-worth. It's a way of reminding both yourself and the narcissist that your time, energy, and emotions are not up for endless negotiation. It's not your job to always be available, to constantly explain yourself, or to fix things for someone who refuses to take responsibility for their own behavior. What makes this especially difficult is the way narcissists respond to rejection. They may escalate, becoming angry, guilt-tripping you, with withdrawing affection or threatening consequences. This reaction is designed to make you reverse your decision. But the moment you say no and hold firm, you send a powerful message. You will not be controlled by fear, manipulation, or emotional blackmail. You are not obligated to overextend yourself to maintain their comfort, especially when your own well-being is at stake. Reclaiming your right to say no isn't about being difficult or confrontational. It's about making space for your own needs, your own growth, and your own truth. It's about refusing to live your life through the lens of someone else's expectations. One of the most damaging effects of a relationship with a narcissist is the slow, calculated erosion of your self-worth. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually through repeated invalidation, manipulation, and emotional neglect. Narcissists are skilled at making you doubt your instincts, question your value, and feel like you're never enough. At first, you might not even notice it. You brush off the insults masked as jokes, the constant criticisms, the lack of empathy, the emotional distance. But over time, your confidence begins to crack. You may begin to believe that your needs are too much, your feelings are too dramatic, or your boundaries are unreasonable. You start to feel like you have to earn love or prove your worth, constantly giving more and receiving less. This mental state becomes a prison where you minimize yourself, second-guess your decisions, and internalize blame for things that were never your fault. Rebuilding your self-worth is not just about recovering from emotional harm. It's about reconnecting with the truth of who you are beyond the false image that the narcissist tried to project onto you. It starts with recognizing that your value does not depend on anyone else's validation. You are not defined by their approval, their attention, or their version of who you should be. Your worth is not up for debate. The process involves unlearning toxic beliefs that were planted by manipulation. It means replacing self-criticism with self-compassion. It means surrounding yourself with people who reflect back your light instead of feeding off your energy. You begin to rebuild through small but consistent acts, setting boundaries, honoring your emotions, pursuing your goals, and giving yourself permission to heal without guilt. Therapy, journaling, creative expression, mindfulness, and even solitude can become powerful tools in this journey. As you reconnect with your voice and your values, you start to feel grounded again. You begin to reclaim your identity, not the one shaped by survival in a toxic relationship, but the one rooted in self, respect, clarity, and emotional freedom. The stronger your sense of self becomes, the more immune you are to the narcissist's attempts to diminish or control you. One of the deepest traps many empathetic people fall into when dealing with a narcissist is the belief that with enough love, patience, or support, they can change the narcissist. This belief doesn't come from weakness. It often comes from compassion, from the hope that there's still something good beneath the surface, from a desire to heal what's broken. You see their wounds, their trauma, their flashes of vulnerability, and you convince yourself that if you just try hard enough, stay long enough, love deeply enough, they'll finally realize their behavior and become who you need them to be. But this belief is dangerous because it shifts the responsibility of change onto you. It turns their dysfunction into your personal project. You become the caretaker, the fixer, the emotional crutch. And while you pour yourself out trying to help them grow, they continue to drain you. Narcissists are not waiting to be rescued. They're waiting to see how much of yourself you're willing to sacrifice before you break. They don't see your efforts as kindness. They see them as opportunities to tighten their grip. The hard truth is this: you cannot heal someone who doesn't acknowledge they're broken. You cannot change someone who believes their behavior is justified. Narcissists are experts at flipping the narrative. They make you feel responsible for their pain while refusing to take accountability for the pain they cause. Every time you try to fix them, you're reinforcing their belief that their behavior is not the problem, your reaction is. Letting go of this responsibility is one of the most liberating, yet emotionally difficult things you'll ever do. It requires you to break the emotional bond that says, maybe if I just hold on a little longer, they'll get better. It asks you to face the reality that your love, no matter how pure or powerful, is not a cure for someone who doesn't want to change. It means accepting that healing someone else can never come at the cost of destroying yourself. Load text to drop file, TXT drop file here, or click to upload, synthesize, advanced settings, ano AV 119, steps 130.8 as 0.0%, synthesized audio 119 steps 430.8 as 0.100% spectrogram, use it via a Playbook built with Gradialago settings.